Rain drizzled over the copper roofs of Kosham Palace, whispering against the stained glass windows like a restless ghost. President Ibrahim Traoré stood alone in the Grand Library, surrounded by the silent testimony of centuries. His fingers lingered on a dusty volume titled Rebirth of Nations, but his mind was not on books. It was the whisper that brought him here. A week ago, a retired intelligence officer had slipped him a sealed letter during a state banquet, wrapped in a napkin between courses. No name, no return address, only one sentence, scrawled in blocky script. There's a tunnel under Kosham. It leads to the truth. For days, Traoré had dismissed it as a bluff. The palace was ancient, yes, but secure, restored after decades of colonial degradation. His advisors, military staff, and even the most meticulous renovation architects had never mentioned a tunnel. But something about the letter gnawed at him. Tonight, he could no longer ignore it. Behind the eastern bookcase, which rarely saw visitors, a peculiar draft had caught his attention the night before. And now, here he stood, pulling aside leather-bound volumes until he saw it, a faint line in the stonework like a forgotten seam. He pressed it, click. The wall hissed open and in. Cold air surged out, thick with the scent of iron and old decay. Traoré's heart pounded as he pried the wall further open. Behind it, a narrow stone stairway twisted into darkness. He hesitated. For the leader of a nation, who had dodged bullets, coups, and political landmines, a staircase shouldn't be intimidating. But this was different. This was personal. This was unknown. He pulled a flashlight from his coat and descended. Each step echoed like a drumbeat into history. The walls were carved from ancient rock, rough and wet. After what felt like forever, the stairs opened into a narrow tunnel. The air was thick, the silence almost living. Then he saw it, etched on the wall in a language older than the nation itself. Truth lies beneath lie. Before he could process it, a voice shattered the silence behind him. Still walking into danger without backup. I see. Traoré spun. The flashlight caught the figure squarely in the face. No, it couldn't be. Sadiq. His voice cracked. The man stepped into the light, older, gaunter, with a scar cutting through his brow. But the eyes were the same. Eyes he'd trusted once. Eyes that had watched his back across 1,000 battlefields. I thought you were dead, Traoré whispered. I was. Sadiq replied. To the world, not to this. Traoré couldn't speak. Sadiq Kone, his best friend, his brother-in-arms, had vanished during the war. Reports said he had defected, sold secrets to the enemy, betrayed his oath. It had nearly broken Traoré. I didn't betray you, Sadiq said, as if reading his thoughts. I had orders from someone higher. Deep infiltration. I stayed under. Too long, Traoré's fists clenched. You could have told me. You let me think. I know. Sadiq cut in. That's why I'm here now. This tunnel doesn't just lead to some old wine cellar. It leads to the regime's archive. Before the revolution, they hid documents, proof of an international corruption ring. Weapons deals. Offshore accounts. Even names of sitting heads of state. Traoré's eyes narrowed. And why now? Sadiq reached into his coat and pulled out an old, battered notebook. Because I followed a courier 5 years ago into this tunnel. I marked every trap, every turn, but I never made it to the archive. Alone, I couldn't. With you, maybe we stand a chance. The tension was a living thing between them. So many wounds, so many ghosts. But Traoré nodded. Then let's finish what they tried to bury. They walked side by side, flashlights dancing over mossy walls and rusted beams. Every so often, Sadiq would raise a hand. Pressure plates there. Don't step or duck. Tripwire, the traps were savage. Spikes, pits, even remnants of gas lines. The old regime hadn't just hidden the truth. They'd armored it. Hours passed like minutes. Somewhere deep in the earth, a metallic creak groaned like an ancient beast. And then it came. A vast chamber opened before them, with statues carved into the walls like silent judges. In the center stood a steel vault, half buried in rubble. Sadiq exhaled. That's it. But the moment his boots stepped forward, a mechanism clicked and the floor beneath him gave way. Traore lunged. Sedou screamed as he slipped. Traore caught his wrist. "Don't let go," Sedou yelled. "I won't," Traore hissed, straining. The weight was too much. His arms shook. Sedou looked up, a strange calm on his face. "Let me fall. You need the document more than me." "Shut up," Traore snapped. "We're not repeating history, not this time." With a roar he pulled, muscles screaming, blood pounding, and Sedou rolled onto solid ground, gasping. For a long moment, neither man moved. Traore turned to him, eyes fierce. "I should hate you," Sedou nodded. "I know, but I don't," Traore said softly. "Not anymore." The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was healing. They stood together staring at the vault. The truth was within reach. The steel vault loomed like a tomb. Thick dust coated its face, and the symbol of the old regime, a snake coiled around a fist, was still visible, despite decades of decay. Sedou stepped closer, rubbing a hand across the faded emblem. "They built this place to outlast kings," he murmured, "but not truth." Traore remained silent, surveying the room. Stone gargoyles watched them from the ceiling arches. There were more traps here. He was sure of it. "How do we open it?" he asked. Sedou pulled a yellowing map from his pocket, the corners torn and smudged with old blood. This was drawn by a deserter. Said he got as far as the vault before turning back. Said it wasn't just the traps. It was the guilt. Traore raised an eyebrow. Guilt? The things hidden in that vault. They weren't just political. Sedou's voice tightened. They documented experiments, torture, manipulations that went far beyond corruption. The silence was broken only by the drip of groundwater. "I kept thinking," Sedou said softly, "if we expose the world to this, would they rise up or collapse under the weight of it?" Traore approached the vault. A keypad covered in rust protruded from a small panel. Numbers blinked faintly. He turned to Sedou. "So what now?" "3 codes," Sedou said. "One political, one personal, one moral. That's how the regime operated. Everything had layers. It's like they wanted to prove their brilliance by hiding truth behind riddles." Traore studied the keypad. Political code? Try the date of the first coup, June 12, 1981. He typed it in, beep. A green light flickered once. A portion of the vault rotated with a low grind. "Personal?" Traore asked. Sedou hesitated. "Try my birth date, July 8, 1979. Another beep, another piece slid aside. "One more," Traore said. "Moral?" Sedou took a long breath. "Try 1999. That was the year we both refused to shoot civilians. Remember?" Traore's hand hovered over the keys, remembering that day. The moment they chose humanity over orders. Over everything. He typed it in. A hiss of ancient hydraulics erupted. The vault split open down the middle with a heavy groan. Inside, shelves stacked with folders. Reels of film and boxes marked in code. A pedestal stood in the center, holding a single black briefcase sealed with 4 steel locks. "Let's not touch anything until we know what we're dealing with," Traore said. They began sorting through the nearest shelf. Each file read like a nightmare. Payoffs to world leaders, orchestrated famines, and forged documents that manipulated entire elections. Then Traore found something that made him freeze. A file with his name. He opened. Inside were photos of his family, his old unit, even candid shots from his time in exile. Notes in red ink read, "Potential destabilizer. Charismatic. Must monitor or eliminate if necessary." His stomach turned. "They had tabs on me," he muttered. "On both of us," Sedou said, handing him another file. It was labeled Kone S. "Why keep records like this?" Traore asked. "Control," Sedou said. "Fear. If you own someone's history, you can write their future." Traore nodded grimly. Then his gaze returned to the black briefcase. "This is it," he said. "The courier I intercepted said the documents inside here prove the existence of a network involving multiple continents, including military contractors, oil cartels, and politicians in office today." Sedou stepped forward. "Then we get it out. We expose it." But the moment Traore lifted the case, alarms shrieked from the stone walls. Red lights blared. The floor beneath them began to shake. "Run!" Sidhu shouted. The room convulsed, ancient stone cracking. They sprinted for the exit, dodging falling debris. The path they had taken began to collapse behind them. Halfway through the tunnel, Sidhu stumbled, his leg crushed under a slab of rock. Traore skidded to a stop. "No, no, go," Sidhu yelled. "You have the case. I'm not leaving you again." Traore dropped to his knees, lifting with all his strength. The slab shifted, just enough for Sidhu to crawl free. Blood streamed down his thigh. They kept running. Dust filled their lungs, the tunnel crumbling around them. At last, they reached the staircase, upward. Light above, they burst into the grand library, coughing, bruised and breathless. Guards stormed in seconds later, weapons drawn, then froze at the sight of their president clutching a black case. "Stand down," Traore barked. The guards obeyed. In the silence that followed, Sidhu turned to him. "You saved me. You gave me the map," Traore said. "You never stopped fighting." Tears welled in Sidhu's eyes. "I thought I lost my soul in that war. You just found it," Traore said, placing a hand on his shoulder. They looked down at the black case between them. It was time to open it. Back in the secure room of Kosham Palace's intelligence wing, President Traoré and Sidhu stood in front of the black briefcase on a stainless steel table. The room was soundproofed, dimly lit, and manned by 2 elite guards, men handpicked by Traoré himself. A forensic technician, young and pale under the fluorescent lights, approached with trembling hands. "We've scanned it. No explosives, no toxins, no electronic self-destructs. But the locking mechanism is biometric." Sidhu leaned in. "Whose biometrics?" The technician hesitated. "According to the embedded ID chip, the briefcase is keyed to you, Mr. President." Traoré's eyes narrowed. "That's not possible. I've never seen this before. Maybe someone planned for you to find it," Sidhu offered. Without further hesitation, Traoré placed his right thumb on the scanner. A green light pulsed, then faded. 4 steel latches released with a quiet hiss. The lid creaked open. Inside lay a set of folders, a hard drive, and an envelope marked "For Eyes That Still Believe." Sidhu reached for the envelope, but Traoré stopped him. "Let me." He peeled it open and pulled out a single sheet. It was a letter, handwritten, dated 10 years earlier. "If this has reached you, it means the truth refused to die. This is bigger than our borders, bigger than the regime." What you'll find in this case are files copied from Vault Omega, a covert global communications center, buried under an oil installation in West Africa. The regime didn't work alone. They were part of something older, deeper. A multinational shadow coalition that profits from war, chaos, and suffering. You'll be tempted to destroy it. Don't. The world deserves the truth. Even if it breaks them, let justice be born from the rubble. No signature. The room felt colder. Sidhu slowly removed the folders and began laying them out. The first was labeled Project Edenfall. The next, Cold Harvest. Then Aries Loop. Each project contained data on covert operations carried out in various parts of the world. In Edenfall, the documents described a plan to destabilize food markets in East Africa, using genetically altered crops that failed after 1 season, ensuring dependency on foreign suppliers. Millions had starved during that time. Traoré's knuckles whitened as he flipped through the charts. The memos, the secret signatures of board members and advisors, including some from institutions he had once trusted. "God," he whispered, "they manufactured famine like a product line." Sidhu opened the Cold Harvest file. "Look at this. A biological weapon disguised as a vaccine trial in rural Asia. It sterilized an entire generation." Traoré sat down, breath shallow. The scale, the callousness, it was all beyond what even the darkest conspiracy theories had imagined. Then came Aries Loop, a project that listed coordinated regime changes across 5 continents. Media blackouts, assassinations, debt manipulation, and engineered social movements, all orchestrated for the profit of a private board known as the Meridian Circle. "I've heard that name," Sidhu muttered. "A myth. A rumor soldiers passed around when things didn't add up. I thought it was a ghost story. It's real, Traore said grimly. And they're still operating. The hard drive, once plugged in by the technician, displayed a vast network of data trails, emails, surveillance footage, bank transactions, voice recordings, the identities of top officials from nations, supposedly at odds, laughing together at private parties, arms deals cloaked as humanitarian aid, election rigging software created in neutral countries and deployed globally. This could tear the world apart, Seydu said. Or set it free, Traore countered. There was a long silence. Finally, Seydu asked, "What are you going to do with it?" Traore leaned back. His eyes were heavy with the weight of choice. "If I release this without a plan, it will create mass panic. Governments will collapse. Innocents will suffer while the guilty vanish. We need coordination. We need allies." Seydu nodded. Back when I was undercover, I built a small network, operatives from different countries who also saw through the lies. Some of them are still active. Traore turned to him. "Can you reach them?" "I'll try. Do it. Quiet. We form a coalition, not just of governments, but of people of conscience. If we expose this, it has to lead to something better. Not just chaos." Seydu rose to his feet, energized. "I never thought we'd get this far." "We haven't," Traore said. "We've just opened the gate. Now we walk through it." Suddenly, an alarm chirped on the technician's console. "Motion detected," he said. Outside the perimeter, Traore stood instantly. "Security? Unknown, too coordinated to be random." Seydu's face darkened. "They know." Traore grabbed the briefcase and locked it. "Move the files. Copy everything. Then burn the originals. No digital trail. We act now." A countdown had begun, not just for the exposure of truth, but for the survival of those who dared to reveal it. They weren't just fighting shadows anymore. The shadows were watching back. It was well past midnight when the first bullet shattered the stained glass of Kosham Palace's west wing. The guards outside scrambled to return fire, but they were outnumbered. Black-clad assailants, faces covered, moved with military precision. They weren't rebels or fanatics. These were professionals. Inside the intelligence wing, the lights flickered. Traore crouched low, barking into his security earpiece. "Status update now. Breach in Sector D." A voice replied. "They're using stun tech, disabling cams and sensors." "We're blind, Mr. President." Seydu locked the briefcase in a reinforced crate and shoved it toward the technician. "Get this to sub-level 3, now." The technician nodded, pale with terror. He took the case and ran for the elevator. "Traore," Seydu said, gripping the president's shoulder. "This is the Meridian Circle. They know exactly where to hit, how to silence. They came faster than I thought. They've been watching since you entered that tunnel." The realization was chilling. Traore pulled a service pistol from a wall panel. "Then we give them a welcome." They moved quickly, room to room, wall to wall, avoiding windows, keeping low. Gunfire echoed above them. Every corner felt like a trap. Every shadow a knife. They reached sub-level 3 just as the technician slammed the vault door shut behind him. "It's in," he said, panting. "Locked. Only your biometric opens it again." "Good," Traore replied. "They won't get it." Seydu peered through the security cam feed. "They've breached the North Hall. We've got maybe 5 minutes. We'll need to split up," Traore said. "Draw them off. Confuse them." Seydu grimaced. "We only just found each other again." "I'm not dying tonight," Traore said with a slight smirk. "And neither are you." He turned to the technician. "Seal this level. No access until I give the order. No matter what." "Yes, sir." They moved. Seydu climbed toward the war room, drawing attackers toward him. Traore darted toward the east wing. A decoy path. Explosions thundered behind him as enemy forces followed. In the chaos, something unexpected happened. A traitor revealed himself. Colonel Idris Ba, once Traore's loyal military strategist, stood in the corridor near the command bridge, holding a rifle. "Ibrahim," he said smoothly. "Put down the gun." Traore froze. You don't understand what you're playing with," Ba said. "You think exposing them will fix anything? No, You'll burn the world. You've been with them this whole time? Not with them, just not stupid. The world is held together by secrets. You tear them down and everything collapses. You betrayed your oath. I kept the world from eating itself. Traore aimed. Move. Ba didn't. A shot rang out. Ba fell. Behind him stood Seydou, gun smoking. Traitors always talk too long. Traore gave him a nod. They moved again, faster now. They could hear the Meridian mercenaries losing patience, shouting, blasting doors, torching hallways. This wasn't about infiltration anymore. It was scorched earth. At the center of the palace, Seydou and Traore regrouped in the old war chamber. Thick walls, no windows, communications still intact. They activated an encrypted satellite line. Traore called the one man he hoped was still on their side, General Maddox of the Southern Coalition Forces. Maddox, Traore said, breathing hard. I need a favor, not official, off the books. You sound like you're in hell. We've got data that proves everything. Meridian Circle, global black ops. It's real, and they're here, inside my walls. A pause. Then you have 10 minutes. I'll get birds in the air. But if this goes public, I never called you. Understood. Traore turned to Seydou. Evac's coming. But we're not done yet. We still need to secure the data, and then release it. Exactly. But even as the helicopters approached, the Meridian team made their last move. Gas hissed into the ventilation system. Seydou stumbled. They're gassing the chamber. Override the fan. Traore slammed the emergency switch. But the controls were fried. Someone had already sabotaged them. The toxin was fast. Paralytic, non-lethal, but incapacitating. Traore reached for a respirator in time. Seydou didn't. He collapsed to the ground, barely conscious. Body twitching. Traore rushed to him, tearing open a med pack. Stay with me, Seydou. Don't you dare leave again. Seydou's hand trembled. It was never about just data. It was redemption. I know, Traore said, inserting the antidote injector into his friend's neck. And you weren't, Seydou gasped, his eyes fluttering. Above them, the roar of helicopters signaled the arrival of reinforcements. Kosham Palace shook with the rumble of boots, gunfire and shouts. It was war, but for the first time, it was a war for truth. And Traore wasn't alone. At dawn, the sun rose over Kosham Palace like a silent witness to the battle that had raged through the night. Smoke curled from shattered windows, walls bore bullet holes, and the marble floors were streaked with blood and fire-retardant foam. But the briefcase was still secure, and President Ibrahim Traoré was still alive. He stood atop the front steps, his coat torn, his face bruised, but his spine unbroken. Around him, soldiers moved swiftly to clear bodies, treat the wounded, and re-secure the grounds. Reinforcements from the Southern Coalition forces had arrived just in time to push the remaining Meridian mercenaries into retreat. But the war wasn't over. Inside the palace, Seydou lay in a medical unit. His body still trembled from the gas, but color had returned to his cheek. Sir Traoré entered the room. Seydou gave a tired smile. "We live?" "Barely," Traoré said, pulling up a chair. "But we won." Seydou's eyes were heavy. "What now?" Traoré opened the briefcase on the hospital table and removed the hard drive. "Now we finish what we started." 2 days later, Geneva. In a discreet building nestled among embassies and global agencies, a private summit had been convened. Traoré stood before leaders of allied nations, journalists, whistleblowers, and cybersecurity experts. No cameras, no broadcasts. Not yet. He held up a silver drive. "This contains irrefutable proof," he said, "of a transnational network operating in the shadows for over 4 decades. They have fed war, profited from disaster, and poisoned democracy in the name of control." The room was silent. "No longer," he declared. "No more shadow, no more lies." He connected the drive to a secure system, and with a single keystroke, the world changed. Files appeared on screens, video recordings of secret meetings, scanned contracts, stolen memos, voices once untraceable admitting to crimes against nations and people. Some gasped, some cried. Others sat frozen, watching illusions crumble. And within minutes, the data was uploaded to a decentralized platform, viewable by anyone, anywhere. Every name, every link, every line, every dollar. A reckoning had begun. 3 weeks later, across the world, arrests were made, banks collapsed under investigation. Heads of state resigned. Some tried to fight the accusations, claiming deep fakes, political plots, but the evidence was too detailed, too damning, too complete. Riots broke out in some cities, but in others, people marched peacefully for reform. A new movement was rising, not based on fear or propaganda, but transparency and unity. And at the heart of it all stood Ibrahim Traoré. He didn't become a savior. He didn't want to be one. But he had done something far rarer. He had told the truth and survived it. 1 month later, Kosham Palace. Traoré walked through the rebuilt corridor that once housed the tunnel entrance. It had been sealed permanently, filled with reinforced concrete. No more secrets would fester beneath the palace. In the courtyard, children were playing. Life had returned. He found Saidu, sitting beneath a fig tree, cane beside him, a newspaper in his lap. Still famous, Traoré said, grinning. Still limping, Saidu replied, but no regrets. They sat in silence for a while. I thought the truth would destroy everything, Saidu said. It nearly did, but it also brought healing. Traoré looked out at the city beyond the walls. We showed them the dark, he said. Now it's their job to choose the light. Saidu chuckled. You always did like your metaphors. I had to balance out your sarcasm. They shared a quiet laugh, and then Saidu's tone turned soft. You forgave me. That's what I still don't understand. Traoré didn't answer at first. He watched a little girl toss a ball to her younger brother. Then he said, because if I hadn't forgiven you, I would have become the kind of man we fought to replace. Saidu's eyes welled up. I'm sorry. I know, Traoré said, and I believe you. They clasped hands, two brothers, once torn apart by betrayal and war, now united in purpose and peace. 1 year later, an international council had formed. Inspired by the documents, its mission was to prevent future regimes from manipulating truth, money, and war. It was imperfect, resisted by many, but it was real, and Traoré had chosen not to lead it. I'm not the future, he told them. I just lit the match. Instead, he returned to his country, rebuilt schools, visited orphanages, and quietly mentored young leaders. He was no longer just the president of a nation. He had become a guardian of its soul. Epilogue. Some still say the Meridian Circle never truly died, that another shadow waits deeper underground, with even colder eyes. Maybe they're right. But if the story of Ibrahim Traoré and Saidu Kone teaches us anything, it's that truth is a light that finds a way to burn through even the deepest darkness. And sometimes, even when betrayed, forgiveness becomes the weapon that saves not only a country, but a soul.